So we're waiting to put something up on the screen? Okay.
So, I have the homework. So these are the duties of a king, a spiritual master, and a parent. So 1, to give protection to the general mass of people who are the citizens. So when it comes to giving protection to the citizens, the king must not only give material protection, but also assist the citizens into becoming Krishna conscious and spiritually inclined. If this does not happen, then the king will be sharing 1/6 of the bad karma that the citizens have accumulated. Therefore, it's very important for the king to abide by these prescribed duties. This also applies to parental relationships. The parents always have to make sure that they are giving their children the correct education so that they can advance spiritually. So,
to treat all subjects equally, whether they have read and understood the scriptures, then they will have known that everyone is. Oops. I think I skipped one. Okay. To treat all subjects equally, whether they are at a greater or inferior position, a king must treat everyone equally. If they have read and understood the scriptures, then they will have known that everyone is to be seen as the soul, not the body. Knowing all this, a king must absorb this duty.
to not get affected by temporary distress or happiness is another duty. The king must always be balanced. Temporary distress and happiness are both material. If anyone is affected by these emotions, then they are still materially influenced. If a king does not get affected by these temporary emotions, then they will be able to guide their subjects spiritually. To have full control over the mind and the senses. This idea is simple. In order for the citizens to follow, the king has to set an example to them so they will understand how they must behave. Same for parents. If a father comes home one day and while smoking says that smoking is bad for a child's well-being, they will find it hard to believe since the father is giving the impression through his actions that anyone can smoke. Now, if the father wasn't a smoker, the child would better believe. To follow the principles laid down by the bona fide spiritual master without any material motives. When one does service, but with material motives, their service is polluted and not pure. The true motive for any individual is to perform selfless and unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. And finally, to make sure that every citizen is on the spiritual path. By following the principles aforementioned, any king, parent, or spiritual master will be able to set an example good enough so that the citizens will also mimic. The trickle-down theory applies here. When the leaders of society follow the principles, then the subjects will also imbibe those qualities.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so you did the homework from last week.
Yeah, this was in regard to those cosmic elephants. You wanted you to come up with explanation how you were explaining to someone. I don't know a little bit in this class, but it was
Oh, okay. So to explain the principle of how the world is being supported, right?
right.
Yeah. So there's a Vedic version, and then there's a science.
Right.
Science.
I find it fantastic
Okay, go ahead, read it. Is it long or?
It's just 4 slides. I projected it over there. I don't know.
Okay, go ahead.
Uh, read down slides. 2 slides.
This was another homework, personalized.
So just to give a background, that I was having a conversation with my boss. This topic came up somehow. Hare Krishna. That I said that. That. So he saw a picture of 4 elephants balancing the Bhumandal in 4 directions, and he found it fantastic that something like this is imaginary, because people in olden times did not have iPhones, so what would they know? So that was a comment he made. He did not necessarily use that word, but incredulous, hard to believe, right? And I tried to explain. I was just about to begin conversation, but it was like a non-starter, and he immediately commented like, "Hey, this is supposed to be a light conversation over lunch." So that was the end of the conversation. But if given an opportunity, this is how I would like to present. So we can go to the next slide. So this is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatham, 5th canto, 20th chapter, verse 39, which describes the 4 cosmic elephants. On top of the Loka Loka mountain are 4 Gajapatis, the best of elephants, which are established in 4 directions by Lord Brahma, the supreme spiritual master of the entire universe. The names of those elephants are Rishabha, Puskarachuda, Vamana, and Aparajit. They are responsible for maintaining the planetary systems of the universe. So if someone reads this or sees a picture as my boss did, what would be the first impression that they would have, right? What kind of questions would come in their mind? So I'll address that first on the next slide. So potential contentions of empiricists. So empiricists are those who believe that truth can be only ascertained by direct perception. So whatever senses can perceive is the only way is the only way one can ascertain the truth. So when they read this description, the fact that they are unable to directly perceive Bhumandal or its various divisions, they do not want to believe it, right? But then Shastra says that our senses are imperfect. So even when we talk about gross biological senses, for instance, our ears can only hear certain frequencies. They cannot hear all frequencies. Our eyes cannot see extremely microscopic objects, for instance. Microscopic. There is illusion, optical illusion, for instance. So one sees something, but it could be totally different. Like you will find on internet so many pictures about optical illusion. So the basic principle that what you perceive by senses is the way to ascertain truth itself is invalid. Hare Krishna. The next point is, same slide. So those who have atheistic mentality, their idea of creation is also atheistic. So Bhagavad Gita 16:8 it describes that atheistic people think that the world is unreal, with no foundation, no God in control. So the idea of cosmic elephants being in control and balancing the universe is also
incredible for them. So this is another reason or another contention that they might have. So let's see how we can address those contentions. So the next slide. So Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Gajas, Dig means directions, Gajas is elephants. They are manifestation in subtle bodies. So that's the main takeaway, and then we'll see how that is possible. So Srimad Bhagavatam describes that the space is actually of 4 levels, but the 4th level is spiritual or apara. Within the material world, there are 3 different tiers of space. So one is causal space, which is basically associated with the personality. Even before that, to make sense of what I mean, let's go over the next 2, which is subtle body and gross body. So gross body, everyone understands. It's our biological body, which have gross senses. Within the gross body is a subtle body, which comprises of mind and intelligence and ego. And there is something which is the personality, which is actually more associated with the false ego, that is the causal body. So the space actually, just there are 3 different tiers of matter, the space also has 3 different tiers. That means there are certain part in the universe where the gross body does not manifest. In that space, the matter manifests only until, say, mental bodies or mental level of matter. Similarly, Hare Krishna. There are. So pasyanti means how we perceive things, how we see. So it's mental body is mostly mind and intelligence, and the causal space is associated more with ego or the personality. The soul, even before it comes to the material world, it has a certain nature, and that nature is enveloped with ego, and that's get perverted. So at an ego level, there is a body that is the personality, what's your attitude is, what your morals are. More subtle than the subtle body. Yeah, more subtle than the subtle body. I think it's in the 11th canto, these terms are described, it's described as Pashyanti, and then mental body is Madhyam, and the gross body is Vaikhari. The description itself is actually referring to the sound. So sound actually manifests across 3 different stages, but the sound evolves into grosser forms up until it goes from earth to air, fire, water, and earth. So, Hare Krishna. So sound is the basic of creation for earth also. So the sound actually is categorized into 3 different levels, and this corresponds to the space. So this earth planet is manifestation at a gross level, but the larger earth, or the Bhumandal disk, where the 7 islands and 7 oceans are located, that space is in subtle dimension. That means the living entities over there, they do not have gross biological bodies. They are mental bodies, and with mental bodies, they perceive subtle sense objects. So they don't need gross body to move around. So they can have the same experience that we have with our gross bodies, just with mental bodies. And how do we believe this? How do we ascertain that? So we all have experience that when we dream, our gross bodies are inactive. But the subtle body is active, the mind is active, intelligence is active, and suppose a tiger attacks you in the dream, you think this is real. You feel the same pain as if like the tiger is really attacking you. So the subtle body is perceiving subtle sense objects without the gross body. It's only when we get out of the dream we realize it. Now, so this is temporary, right? But there are living beings, higher living beings, whose entire existence is on a subtle platform. That means they are interacting with subtle matter just using their subtle senses. So if somebody has to perceive the Gajas or the other parts of Bhumandal, by yogic process they have to give up the gross body. Then they can travel to where Loka mountain is, because by material means you cannot travel. It's so far out. But when a yogi sheds the gross body, it becomes light. With a subtle body, they can travel and then access those subtle spaces and perceive Diggajas with their subtle senses. Next slide. So what actually does it mean? So the last line of Bhagavatam says that this Diggajas, they are balancing the planetary system. So what exactly it means? So the underlying principle is that when we study modern geometry, we study x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. But the space is uniform. You know, there is no qualitative difference between vertically going, horizontally going. But Shastras describe, and this is the foundation of Vastu Shastra also. So there are 3 axes. East-west axis corresponds to Tamoguna, or the mode of ignorance. So I think it's a Chaitanya Charitamrita that says that as you go further west, mode of ignorance increases. East is low mode of ignorance. You go north, the mode of passion decreases. Go south, the mode of passion increases. So if you look at the northeast corner, is low mode of low mode of passion and low mode of ignorance. So according to Vastu, the northeast corner is the best for establishing deities. So everything. So southwest corner is best for having a bedroom because it's high mode of ignorance and high mode of passion. Right. So this is just the principle. We are not going to go into Vastu, but the point being, no, southwest. Right. So whatever your activities, sleeping is in mode of ignorance. So it's high mode of ignorance, high passion. Right. And the zenith and the nadir axis. So this is horizontal dimension, but there's a vertical dimension. Is mode of goodness. So you go. So demigods, they are situated on further up in the universe, while the demons are further down because the demigods are in the mode of goodness. So what are the 4 elephants doing in 4 cardinal directions? They are balancing actually the modes, because the entire planetary systems, they depending on their location, they are manifestation of the modes. So the elephant which is in the extreme north has the lowest rajoguna with no tamaguna. The elephant in the exact opposite direction has a high rajoguna and no tamaguna. So they are balancing the gunas. In the center, there is almost 0 tamaguna. Similarly, the elephant in the east is low tamaguna and no rajoguna because it's right in the center. So in this way, basically, they are in charge of balancing the modes, and based on the modes, the entire creation manifests. So this is what I have tried to understood based on reading and explanation from some devotees. Hare Krishna. Manifests from subtle to gross. So the empiricists, they only perceive, you know, the gross things. But everything that happens has to happen from a subtle level of reality.
At one time, when Prabhupada first came to our first temple in Paris, and when I showed him his bedroom, and he looked at the bedroom, and he looked at his bed, and he asked me, which way is north? So I said, it's this way. He said, okay, turn the bed around. He said, my head should always be north. Yeah. So if you sleep with your head south, then you're in the mode, you get influenced by Rajaguna, right? No, I'm sorry, no. He asked me which way is east, I'm sorry. He asked me which way is east. He didn't say north. Which way is east? And we had it going west, so he made us turn the bed around. Yeah. I'm sorry. You're correct. So, West is ignorance, right? And east is goodness. So if your head is in the south direction, then you get influenced by ignorance. If your head is in the east direction, when you're sleeping, you get influenced by goodness. I mean west. Yeah, you get influenced by goodness. Well, south is ignorance. Okay. North is...
So north is actually low Rajoguna
Yeah.
and south is high Rajoguna. East is low Tamoguna, west is high Tamoguna. So, the ideal location is your head to be taken.
Okay. So now we go back to our subject, and that is it's about polity or governance. What should be the qualities of a leader, and what are the leadership qualities that lead to a perfect society? Okay, so we discussed, we ended up on, we'll read the purport to 1420. I'm sorry, 4th chapter, 20th, 4th canto, 20th chapter, 14th verse. To give protection to the general mass of people who are citizens of the state is the prescribed occupational duty for a king. By acting in that way, the king in his next life shares 1/6 of the result of the pious activities of the citizens. But a king or executive head of state who simply collects taxes from the citizens but does not give them proper protection as human beings has the results of his own pious activities taken away by the citizens. And in exchange for his not giving protection, he becomes liable to punishment for the impious activities of his subjects. And this is also true for teachers and parents. The question may be raised here that if everyone engaged in spiritual activities to attain salvation and became indifferent to the activities of the material world, then how could things as they are go on? In other words, if everyone became devotees, then how would the world go on? How would Microsoft go on? How would City of Seattle go on? Everyone would be just chanting Hare Krishna all the time. Right? And if things are to go on as they ought to, how can a head of state be indifferent to such activities? In other words, if the king is just chanting Hare Krishna all day, then how could he manage his kingdom? Right? Well, in answer to this question, the word Shreya, auspicious, is used here. So there's Shreyas and Preyas. So Shreyas is long-term good, and Preyas is short-term good, I think. Yes. Okay. So in answer to this question, the word Shreya is auspicious is used here. The division of activities in society as arranged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead was not blindly or accidentally created. In other words, the varnas and ashramas that are created by Krishna, Chaturvanyam Maya Shrista, Gunakarma Vibhagasa, 4th chapter, 13th verse, Krishna says, in the beginning of time I created the 4 varnas. So this didn't happen accidentally, as foolish people say. The Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras are intellectuals, military and political persons, businessmen and workers. It did not happen accidentally. This was created by Krishna. The Brahmana must do his duty properly, and the Kshatriya, the Vaishya, and even the Sudra must do the same. And every one of them can achieve the highest perfection of life, liberation from this material bondage. In other words, from the cycle of birth and death. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 1845, Sve Sve Karmanya Birata Samsiddhim Labhate Nara. By executing one's prescribed duties, one can attain the highest perfection. Lord Vishnu advised Maharaj Prithu that a king is not enjoined, is not ordered to give up his kingdom and the responsibility of protecting the prajas or citizens to instead go away to the Himalayas for liberation. He can attain liberation while executing his royal duties. So this is the answer to all the foolish statements by materialists. They say, well, if everyone becomes a devotee, how's the world going to go on? So Krishna does not say, give up your duty. What's he tell Arjuna? He said, you must do your duty, but do it for me without attachment to the result. So we read earlier, yesterday, that when one engages in devotional service, it should be done with no material motive. Then you become happy and satisfied. But if you engage in devotional service with a material motive, you'll never be happy. You'll never have satisfaction. What are the material motives? They are, you want money, you want sense gratification, you want to be honored, you want to be elevated to heavenly planets for better sense gratification, better honor, better money. See? So as long as people are doing pujas or worship for material gain, they will never be satisfied and they'll never be happy. Right? But if you engage in Krishna consciousness with no material motive, you'll definitely be satisfied and happy in this life. And you'll have no worries, because Krishna will always be taking care of you. So, if people are worried, if they're not satisfied, if they're not happy, they're always in trouble. One trouble or another, health, legal problems, and so forth. Then, you know that you're not Krishna conscious, for sure. You might be acting as if you're Krishna conscious, but everything goes from the subtle to the gross, as we just learned, right? So subtly, you're not Krishna conscious. The mind is not dwelling on Krishna, it's dwelling on sense gratification. The royal duty, okay, so the king can attain liberation while executing his royal duties. The royal duty, or the duty of the head of state, is to see that the prajas, or the general mass of people, prajas means whoever is born in that country. That includes not only people, it includes animals also, and plants, and all living entities. The general mass of people are doing their respective duties for spiritual salvation. In other words, that the mass of people are engaged in Krishna consciousness in some way or other, either gradually through the varnashram system or directly by full engagement in devotional service. A secular state does not necessitate a king. In other words, a secular state does not mean that the king or the head of state remain indifferent to the activities of the prajas. In the modern state, the government has many rules and regulations for conducting duties of the prajas, the duties of the citizens. But the government neglects to see that the citizens advance in spiritual knowledge. If the government is careless in this matter, the citizens will act whimsically. Whimsically means they do whatever they feel like doing, rather than what they should be doing. Right? Without any sense of God realization or spiritual life, and thus become entangled in sinful activities. Now, this is a very important point. And we have to understand what is the difference between whimsical behavior and spiritual behavior leading toward God realization. This is also explained at the end of the 16th chapter. There's a very important verse that says, Yasascha vidim utshrijya vartate kamakarataha na sasidim avapnoti na sukham na param gatim. This is 16th chapter, 23rd verse. 16th chapter, 23rd verse. And it says, He who discards spiritual injunctions, in other words, spiritual rules and regulations, and acts according to his own whims, attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. So what we're looking at now is the difference between whimsical behavior, acting according to one's whims, W-H-I-M-S. What does a whim mean? It means whatever comes into your mind. Right? Like, for example, let's see, Devakinandan told a story last Sunday. He said there was a man who was dying, and he was a worshiper of Lord Shiva. So on his deathbed, his son said to him, I forget the Hindi word, but the Sanskrit word is Vak Bolo Bola. Vak means say. How do you say it in Hindi? Is it Bap? They say Vak? Or Bap? Say. No, but he used the word before Bolo. He said something Bolo. Yeah. Oh, Vap. 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 Okay. He said, I thought he said Vak. Yeah, okay. Bap. He said Bap, Bolo, Bolo, Bola. Bola means Shiva, right? Right. So his father, he's on his deathbed, right before he dies, he misunderstands, and he said, Bolo Cola, or the Coca-Cola. He said Coca-Cola. So after they had a Shrad ceremony for him, after he died, and the devotees came to that, and they served prasadam with Coca-Cola. So the devotees were confused, and I said, what is this Coca-Cola? So they called the son. I said, what is this Coca-Cola? And then he told them, well, right before he died, I told him, Bap, Bolo, Bola, and he said, Coca-Cola. So we want to serve Coca-Cola. So, see, that is something whimsical, right? If you were drinking Coca-Cola while you were alive, and someone says, Bolo, Bola, you say Coca-Cola. See, because acting whimsically. See, whatever enters into your mind, you say it without thinking, right? So that's why we should not be wasting our time playing video games and things like that, because just like the father, he was drinking Coca-Cola when it was, when it was all right, and he misunderstood what his son said, but he just said what he was normally doing. He says Coca-Cola instead of Bolo Bola. And the same way, if we are doing whimsical things in whatever comes into your mind. So I think today I'll eat hamburger. Forget about the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. In fact, I actually saw this once. I was with a sannyasi, an ISKCON sannyasi, in Paris, and we were walking past a confiserie, which means a French pastry shop. And French pastry shops are beautiful. In the window, they show all the different pastries, and they look very tempting and delicious, right? So he said, hey, what's this? I said, it's a confiserie, French pastry shop. He said, wow. He said, it looks really good. So he was looking at everything. He said, hold my danda. I said, what? I said, hold my danda. I said, why? He said, I'm going to go in and buy one of those. I said, but it might have eggs. I said, no, I didn't hear you say that. And he walks in. Right. And then when he left Paris, he left his danda, and then we heard later on that he blooped from Krishna consciousness. Right? So, you see, that's a whimsical thing he did. He became attracted by the pastries. They look very beautiful. So that's why people fall down from the spiritual world. They become attracted to something that's glittering in the material world. Just like people go to Las Vegas because everything is glittering. Right? People go to Broadway in New York because everything is glittering. Right? Or people go to casinos, like here in Seattle, because everything's glittering when you go in it. They're all shiny. And the same way, the fly lands on the spider's web during the day, because if you ever see a spider's web during a sunny day, it's glittering. And the bug is going, bzzz, oh, look at that. It looks so nice. Look at the light show. Zzz, lands on the spider web. And then it says, well, I'm tired of looking at this light show. Now I'll go somewhere else. So it goes, zzz, zzz, zzz. It can't go away because its wings, which are very light and delicate, they get stuck on the saliva, because the spider web is made with the saliva of the spider. And the same way, the spider can expand and build a spider web, which is a very intricate geometrical construction. And it can, just like you can spit and you could drink it or take it back into your mouth, right? You can spit and you can also lick it back into your mouth. That's what the spider does. He can lick back the whole spider web. See? So he's going zit, zit, he can't move. Eventually, doing zit, 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 he gets exhausted. And then the spider has been watching everything. So now the spider very slowly, purposely, very slowly goes, every time he goes like this, the spider, the web moves like that. And the bug, the fly, is terrified until the spider stands right on top of him with his legs, looking at him. And the fly is, zzz, 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 it can't fly. It's stuck. And then the spider very slowly lowers a needle-like part of his body, and then inserts the needle into the body of the bug and kills it with his poison. The whole thing is terrifying. If you ever know who's the greatest terrorist in the world, it's the spider. Yeah. And they do it on purpose. They do it on purpose. If you ever look at nature, you'll see terrifying things. You know. Anyway, the whimsical behavior, just like that, the fly was whimsical. It saw a very glittering geometrical construction and thought, oh, this is wonderful. Let me go and fly and sit on that a little bit and enjoy it. But actually it didn't realize it was his death. Right? And terrifying death. So in the same way, people think, oh, the material world looks better than the spiritual world. Let me give it a try. It's whimsical behavior. They end up in the material world and it's horrible. And to get out is almost impossible. Okay, so therefore the leader of the state must be a devotee and must do his duty to protect the citizens of the state by making Krishna consciousness available and seeing that they take it seriously so that they can go back to Godhead. You see? So nobody today is being trained to be a leader in that way. That's why every one of these leaders, they come in with so many promises and they all fail. They just make the people, give them a lot of hope and then it just let them down. And the people go deeper into the throes of birth and death. In a modern state, the government has many rules and regulations for conducting the duties of the citizens or prajas, but the government neglects to see that the citizens advance in spiritual knowledge. If the government is careless in this matter, the citizens will act whimsically, without any sense of God realization or spiritual life, and thus become entangled in sinful activities. Well, we're seeing that every day. Suicide is increased. Murder and violence in public schools has increased. War has increased. Diseases and pestilence have increased. Famine has increased. And so many problems have increased. They haven't decreased, they've increased. Because of the whimsical behavior of people. People are just acting, disregarding completely the principles of Krishna consciousness or Sanatana Dharma. And they're going deeper and deeper into dissatisfaction, frustration, and misery. An executive head should not be callous to the welfare of the general mass of people while he simply goes on collecting taxes. The king's real duty is to see that the citizens gradually become fully Krishna conscious. Krishna consciousness means completely free from all sinful activities. So now, if someone asks you, what is this Krishna consciousness? What is your answer? Hari. Microphone. We want to hear your answer loudly. Hold it closer to your mouth.
It's where we surrender onto Krishna in this movement.
Yes and no, but how? How do you surrender? Okay, Pranay, go ahead.
When someone asks you what Krishna conscious is, I think you should answer it saying that Krishna conscious is having conscious, like you.
Okay, that was I stink. So, who's next? That was not I think, that was I stink. Okay, Yamuna.
Oh.
Oh, you want to answer? Okay.
It's like
Hare Krishna.
it's when
Hare Krishna.
I just said it.
Okay, give the microphone to Yamuna. That was a second I stink.
On the board here, it says that Krishna consciousness means to completely free from all sinful activities.
Very good. Okay, now I've told you 1,000 times, whenever I ask a question, it's probably on what I just read. Okay? So why don't you just pick up on that hint? Okay. Okay. So now, Mayapur, if someone asks you, what is Krishna consciousness, what are you going to say? Hare Krishna!
Krishna conscious means completely free from all sinful activities.
Very good. Okay. Yes. Okay, who wants to answer that question? Hari. What are the sinful activities? Hari.
What, like examples, or just what is it?
What are they? Just say it. Go ahead.
Actions that actions that make you get reactions, which.
What are those actions? He wants to know, what are the
No
sinful
meat eating,
activities? No meat eating,
intoxication,
intoxication.
no illicit sex, and no gambling.
Yeah, so they are meat eating, gambling, intoxication, and illicit activities. Okay? Those are the sinful activities. So Krishna consciousness means no sinful activities. Free from all sinful activities. As soon as there is complete eradication of sinful activities in the state, there will be no more war, pestilence, famine, and natural disturbances. Okay? Just like one time a person was talking to me and said, oh, it's so terrible, the AIDS epidemic, it's so terrible. I said, there's an easy solution to it. What? They're spending billions of dollars, the government, to find a solution to it. I said, no, it's a very easy solution and it's free. He said, what? Really? What is it? No illicit activities outside of marriage. He said, oh, no, that's not a solution. You see how stupid people are? What did Prabhupada say here? He said, simply, as soon as there's complete eradication of sinful activities in the state, then there will be no more war, pestilence. Pestilence means disease, right? Communicable diseases like AIDS, right? Famine or natural disturbances. See how stupid people are? You know, they want to spend billions of dollars to find a solution to AIDS, but there's a simple solution. No illicit activities outside of marriage. You know, that's all. It's very simple. It's not complicated, is it? This was actually prevailing. In other words, this freedom from pestilence, famine, natural disturbances, war. In other words, people were happy. This was actually prevailing. This actually existed during the reign or during the kingship of Maharaj Yudhishthira. If a king or head of the government is able to induce, or meaning inspire or convince the citizens to become Krishna conscious, then he is worthy to rule over the mass of people. Otherwise, he has no right to levy taxes. So theoretically, you could tell President Trump, I'm not paying my taxes anymore unless you promote Krishna consciousness. Of course, you'll go to jail because they're all demons, you know, they don't believe you. But yeah, the king has, and what happens if he doesn't promote Krishna consciousness and levies taxes? He's sinful. He'll suffer for it. If the king looks after the spiritual interests of the citizens, he can levy taxes without difficulties. In this way, both the subjects and the king will be happy during this life. And in the next life, the king will be able to share 1/6 of the pious activities of the citizens. Otherwise, by levying taxes on the sinful citizens, he will have to share the reactions of their sinful activities. So this is also true for teachers and parents. You have a question, Mayapur?
Yeah. So,
Hare Krishna.
So, Trump, he got a Bhagavad Gita and like.
He did?
And
Did he get a Bhagavad Gita?
Yes.
But is that fact? No,
But
he did not get. Obama got a Bhagavad Gita. I don't think Trump got one.
yeah.
But Trump did devotional service for Lord Jagannath. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he owned a property in downtown New York, and the devotees were looking for some place where they could build their Rath Yatra cart for the Rath Yatra festival. And they contacted Trump, who owned a particular building and property, or a particular property that was like an open space. He hadn't built anything on it yet. And he said yes. And he let the devotees build their Rath Yatra cart. So he got the mercy of Lord Jagannath. That's probably why he got elected president of the United States. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think is going to happen to them?
No, they are salaried employees, let's say. I mean,
What?
They get salary for, let's say, president, I mean, at least in India, prime minister gets a salary.
They
So
all
he's-
get salaries, yeah. Trump doesn't take the salary because he says, I have enough money. It's the people's money, yeah.
So
he
if
doesn't
they-
want to take the money from the people.
So if they get salary, then why they have to, like, if they are levying taxes, then they are levying taxes for probably United States, but not for himself. Then why?
Well, we're talking about a king, but
Thank you.
whoever's a leader, they have no right to ask for taxes unless they give spiritual, let's say, facility for the people to make spiritual advancement. You know. So, you know, the same principle is there in Islam. They have an Islamic state. They oblige the people to follow Islamic lifestyle, praying regularly, doing Ramadan, going on Hajj, and eating only halal meat. There's no such thing as halal meat, but anyway, it is in a sense, but they have their dietary restrictions. So they have to do 5 things to be a Muslim. And then the last thing is giving zakat, which is giving charity at least once a year in large amounts. Okay, so that's Islamic State. And then following Sharia law. So they have, Muhammad was a prophet, recognized by Prabhupada also. So he tried to regulate the lives of Muslims according to spiritual practice, especially the praying 5 times a day and waking up early and all those different things, and fasting and so forth. This same principle can be applied to parents and spiritual masters as well. If parents simply give birth to children like cats and dogs, but cannot save their children from imminent death, they become responsible for the activities of their animalistic children. Lately, such children are turning into hippies. Similarly, if a spiritual master cannot direct his disciples to become free from sinful activities, he becomes responsible for their sinful acts. These subtle laws of nature are unknown to the present leaders of society. Subtle laws of nature. Why does it say subtle laws of nature? Because whether you know about them or not, you will suffer if you infringe on them. Right? How can you know about them? You can only know about them if you are instructed in Vedic knowledge. Now, a lot of people don't have access to Vedic knowledge. That's why Lord Chaitanya wanted this Krishna consciousness to be spread all over the world. So there's no excuse, I don't know. These subtle laws of nature are unknown to the present leaders of society. Since the leaders of society have a poor fund of knowledge, and the citizens in general are rogues and thieves, they cannot be an auspicious situation for human society. Bhagavad Gita was meant for kings. The knowledge of Bhagavad Gita is meant for leaders of society. It was spoken by Krishna to Arjuna. Why? Because Arjuna is the leader of society. He's a Kshatriya. So this Bhagavad Gita is specifically meant for the leaders of society. At the present moment, the whole world is full of such an incompatible combination of state and citizens. And therefore, there is constant tension, war, and anxiety as an inevitable result of such societal conditions. Okay, so next verse, 15. Lord Vishnu continued, "My dear King Prithu, if you continue to protect the citizens according to the instructions of the learned Brahmana authorities, as they are received by the disciplic succession, by hearing, from master to disciple, and if you follow the religious principles laid down by them without attachment to ideas manufactured by mental concoction, then every one of your citizens will be happy and will love you, and very soon you will be able to see such already liberated personalities as the 4 Kumaras, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumara." In other words, when the king or the leader of society is a devotee, and he protects the citizens of that society by encouraging them to engage in Krishna consciousness, and the king listens on a regular basis the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam from saintly persons and brahmanas, then the citizens will be happy and the king will be happy, and the citizens will love the king or the ruler, and everyone will be able to see eventually liberated personalities like the 4 Kumaras come to the earth. You see? They don't want to come to the earth now because everyone's enjoying their 4th of July barbecue, and and doing all kinds of nonsense, engaging in sinful activities. But if people gave up all these things, then they would see the devatas. They would see identified flying objects. Right now they see unidentified flying objects, UFOs. But if they became pious in Krishna consciousness, they would see identified flying objects. They would not be unidentified. They'd be the airplanes of the devas. The airplanes of the devas are not Boeings and Airbuses. They're swans and other types of birds, and they fly through the universe. And they'll come to the earth. They'll start coming to the earth. Just like there are places that you don't go to, right? Like, Hari, do you go into a bar? No. Do you come to a temple? Yes, right? Because you're like a deva. You avoid the bar, but you come to the temple. There are other people who go to the bar and avoid the temple. They're the demons, you know. You see, so the devas won't come to the earth anymore because people are not engaged in pious activities. Of course, if we engage in pious activities sincerely in the temple, then devas come here. Even during the kirtan especially, they'll come to see. And then we become purified, we'll actually be able to see them. Just like one time, Prabhupada did a program and hardly anyone came. And the devotee said, "Oh, we're so sorry, Prabhupada, you know, nobody came." He said, "Oh, I don't think so." He said, "Well, only a few people came." He said, "No, but Narada Muni was there." So, the devotees couldn't see, but Prabhupada could see, right? Lord Vishnu advised King Prithu that everyone should follow the principles of Varnashrama Dharma. Then, in whatever capacity one remains within this material world, his salvation is guaranteed after death. In this age, however, since the system of Varnashrama Dharma is topsy-turvy, in other words, not very established, it is very difficult to strictly follow all the principles. The only method for becoming perfect in life is to develop Krishna consciousness. So now, is there a difference between Varnashrama Dharma and Krishna consciousness? Let's ask that question. Is it the same thing or is it different? Yeah, Daiva Varnashram is all the Varnas and Ashramas are God-centered. In other words, they all chant Hare Krishna. The traditional Varnashram system is much more rigid and actually impossible to follow in Kali Yuga. Yes, Pranay, what is your point here? It's on, it's on, it's on. Oh. Okay, just don't move it, just hold it carefully and speak into it.
Wasn't the Dharma that we couldn't follow in Kali Yuga the one where if you touch your hair you would be due for like a shower?
Okay, that's the strict Varnashram Dharma system. So it's more or less not possible to strictly follow it in Kali Yuga. We're not really qualified. Therefore, there's Daiva Varnashrama. So Daiva Varnashrama is God-centered Varnashram. So the temple is an example of God-centered Varnashram. All kinds of people come in here. Some may be Brahmanas, Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, Sudras, or they may be lower than that, like Malechas and Yavanas. But we don't say you can't come in because you're a Malecha or a Yavana. And when they come in, we try and encourage them to chant Hare Krishna and learn about the regulative principles and hear Bhagavad Gita and especially take prasadam. So if they just do those things gradually, they become purified. And then they'll use their natural tendency to work and talents in the service of Krishna. So that's called Daiva Varnashrama. It's not the strict Varnashram Dharma as practiced previously, but it leads to the same goal. The goal is people become purified and they become Krishna conscious. Yes, Pranay.
So, in the Jagannath Puri temple, why wouldn't they allow anyone?
No, they allow everyone, but they don't allow non-Hindus, especially white people, the whiteys.
Why is that?
Because the Brahmins have a prejudice based on the idea that you have to be born a Hindu to be a Hindu. But that's not your color of skin is not the right color. So, it's a bodily concept. They have this false understanding. Yes? What? Yeah, go ahead.
So technically we're not. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You said it. So technically we are.
Hare Krishna.
So technically we are Sanatan Dharma, but not Hindus. So technically.
Not what? Sanatan Dharma, but not what?
Yeah, we're not. Technically, we're not Hindus. We're like we follow Sanatan Dharma. So why don't the pujaris at Jagannath Puri allow people to?
Because they have a bodily concept of life. They won't let people who are white-skinned into the temple, even if you're a Hindu. Right. Well, they want to find out. They'll find out. If someone, there are light or white-skinned people born in India. They're usually descendants of the Greeks, because the Greeks conquered India and they intermarried. And so you go to Punjab, Afghanistan, places like that, you'll see people that look like Europeans, right? But they're actually descendants or a mixed race of the Greeks and intermarried. Yes, Advait.
Some devotees who are not born Indian have went into the Jagannath temple by just sneaking into the Jagannath temple.
Okay, I heard the beginning. The last you mumbled because you spoke too fast. What did you say in the end?
Some devotees.
Yes.
They snuck into the Jagannath temple even though they're not Indian. They're not Hindu born.
Okay, well, yeah. So what? Okay. All right, so we'll go forward now. In this age, however, since the system of Varnashram Dharma is topsy-turvy, it is very difficult to strictly follow all the principles. The only method for becoming perfect in life is to develop Krishna consciousness. As Varnashram Dharma is executed from different positions by different men, so the Krishna consciousness principles can be followed by everyone in every part of the world. So, Krishna consciousness can be followed by everyone. It's not difficult. Yesterday I was explaining to one man. He said, "Do you guys do yoga?" I said, "Yeah, we do yoga." He said, "But I don't see you doing yoga." I said, "No, this is yoga." I pointed to the plate of prasadam he was eating. I said, "Our kind of yoga we do, we don't do the different postures. What we do is chanting, dancing, and feasting. So you're engaged in yoga right now by feasting." He said, "Oh." He said, "That sounds easy." I said, "Yeah. You like to eat?" He said, "Yeah, I like to eat." I said, "You like what you're eating?" "Yeah, it's pretty good." I said, "Well, just keep coming. You'll be a yogi." Yeah, so anybody can do Krishna consciousness in any part of the world. There is a specific purpose in mentioning herein that one should follow the Dvija Griyas, the most prominent brahmanas like Parasara and Manu. These great sages have already given us instructions on how to live according to the principles of Varnashrama Dharma. So Manu wrote the Manu Samiti, Manu Shastra, and Parasara, I'm not sure what he wrote. but he gave instructions also about ideal life. Similarly, Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami have given us rules and regulations for becoming pure devotees of the Lord. So, again, let's ask the question, is there a difference between Varnashram Dharma and Krishna consciousness? There is a slight difference, yes. Varnashram Dharma is for gradual elevation of people to come to purified consciousness or Krishna consciousness. Whereas Krishna consciousness, you can take to it immediately and become purified. You don't have to go through all these different steps. But if that's true, then why did Prabhupada establish or why did he say near the end of his pastime that I've only done half of my work, I need the other half I have to accomplish, and that is Varnashram. Yes, Prabhu.
So, my understanding is that Srila Prabhupada, after
Hare Krishna,
when he started the movement in 1966, and by the time another 11, 12 years, he was very happy to see a lot of devotees taking up Krishna consciousness, but at the same time he saw that many of his disciples, including sannyasis, had difficulty keeping their vows. And so he realized that though Krishna consciousness can be taken up immediately for most people and a lot of people,
Hare Krishna,
because of their conditioning, they have to go
Hare
through
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. They have to go through a gradual process.
Yes.
And so Varnashram would help
Hare
classify the society based on their guna and karma, and engage their proclivities in the service of Krishna, and thus gradually be elevated to Krishna consciousness.
Also, Prabhupada was very concerned about spreading the movement throughout the whole world, and he knew that he was able to make 4,500 devotees, right? But that's a very small number compared to the population of the world. So he realized that the Varnashram Dharma would have to be instituted for the mass of people, because they're not all going to become Krishna conscious right away. And you don't necessarily violate your religion or non-religion by following Varnashram. We'll continue after.
Vinanan Karabora Vamsi Vadana Suvasa Vamsi Vadana Suvasa Vamsi Vadana Suvasa Vajjana Palana Surkulanasana Vajjana Palana Surakulanasana Vajjana Palana Surakulanasana Nanda Godana Rakawala Nanda Godana Rakawala Nanda Godana Rakawala Nanda Godana Rakawala Govinda Madhava Navanita Daskara Govinda Madhava Navanita Daskara Govinda Madhava Navanita Daskara Govinda Madhava Navanita Daskara Sundara Nanda Gopala Sundara Nanda Gopala Sundara Nanda Gopala Sundara Nanda Gopala Yamuna Tatchara Gopi Basana Yamuna Tatchara Gopi Basana Yamuna Tatchara Gopi Basana Yamuna Tatchara Gopi Basana Rasa Rasika Kripa Moya Rasa Rasika Kripa Moya Rasa Rasika Kripa Moya Moya Shri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Natabara 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 Bhakti Vinoda Shaya Bhakti Vinoda Shaya Yashomati Nandana Brajavara Nagara Gokula Ranjana Kana 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Jaya Radha Nila Radha Nila Radha Jaya Radha Nila Radha Jaya Radha Nila Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Vishnu Pal Paramasa Parvati Shaya Stotra Shishyan His Divine Grace Abhay Charanar Vinda Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnu Pal Paramahamsa Parivada Kacharya Stotra Shishyan His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sikhao Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Chamakunda Radha Kundagiri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannathpuri Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Nandi Hare Hare Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Gauranga Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna. So Parasara Muni and Manu, and then Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami. So we were discussing just now, is there a difference between Varnashrama, the traditional Varnashrama, and Krishna consciousness? Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I just looked up on internet what Parashar Muni had compiled.
Yeah.
So he compiled Parashar Smriti, also known as Parashar Dharma Samhita, which is a code of laws specifically for Kali Yuga. Parashar Smriti, also known as Parashar Dharma Samhita, code of laws specifically for Kali Yuga. Yeah.
Parashara Smriti?
Smriti, yes. Also known as Parashar Dharma Samhita.
Good.
And
okay.
There's also a branch of astrology called Brihat Parashar Hora Sastra.
Okay.
So he is a compiler of that as well. And also Ayurveda and text on botany called Vriksha Ayurveda. Vriksha, tree, Ayurveda.
Yeah, trees are very medicinal. You have to know. The bark of the tree, the root of the tree, leaves. Like the moringa trees, the whole thing is medicinal. The moringa tree. You eat those what do you call it? They call them lady fingers, right? What do you, the sukta? No, not sukta. No, not okra. In Bengal, they have these stems. You know, I forget the name of it. What's the name of that? The stems that they make subjis with. Mataji makes subjis with them also. Drumsticks, yeah. Drumstick comes from the moringa tree. It's this. Drumstick comes from the moringa tree. So every part of that tree is medicinal. Every part. You can eat the leaves. You eat the drumsticks, the bark, the roots. They're all. They're either you can use it for food or you can use it for medicine. The leaves were given normally to children in South India to maintain their health. They make a powder out of it, and it was eaten on a regular basis for health. You did? Used to eat it, yeah. So the moringa tree is one of those miraculous trees, and the neem tree is called the apothecary tree. You can heal almost any disease with neem if you take enough of it. Take enough of it. Okay. So, coming back to the question, is there a difference between the traditional Varnashram and Krishna consciousness? So Prabhupada, my understanding is Prabhupada, when he said, I've only done half my work, now I have the other half is Varnashrama Dharma. He was thinking about the whole society when he said that, because not everyone's going to take the Krishna consciousness. And what I said at the end is that you don't necessarily violate your religion by following Varnashrama Dharma. Let's say someone is a Muslim. They don't have to convert to Krishna consciousness in order to follow Varnashrama Dharma. They simply have to accept the principles of Varnashrama, which is organized scientific it's scientific organization of society according to the Varnas and the Ashramas. So they already have it in a sense. What they don't have is the clear understanding of how to follow the Varnas. They have an understanding of how to follow the Ashramas because they have the madrasa schools for kids. Those are religious schools for kids. They have the duties for the grihastas, and they also have the duties for renunciates in Islam. So they have similar things. It's not clearly codified like the like the ashramas in the Varna ashrama system, but it's close. It's close. Okay. Similarly, Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami have given us rules and regulations for becoming pure devotees of the Lord. So my point is that Prabhupada wanted to establish Varnashram for the whole society, because not everyone's going to become a devotee overnight. But by following Varnashram, one gradually is elevated to the position of pure devotee. It is essential, therefore, to follow the instructions of the acharyas in the parampara system, who have received the knowledge as passed down from spiritual master to the disciple. In this way, although living in our material condition of life, we can get out of the entanglement of material contamination without leaving our positions. So this is the whole point. People will criticize Krishna consciousness. They'll say, oh, if my son joins your Hare Krishna movement, then he won't go to college, then he won't become a doctor, then he won't get married, then he won't have a family, then he won't do this, then he won't do that. That's all a bunch of nonsense. It's not true. It's not true at all. He'll do those things better if he becomes Krishna conscious. Why? Because Krishna consciousness teaches a person to be regulated according to spiritual principles. It teaches them And all sickness is caused by irregular habits. Not eating at the same time, not sleeping at the same time, not waking up at the same time, not bathing at the same time. All these irregular habits make people sick. And then they have to take drugs. And that just gets them sicker. Then one learns, by becoming Krishna conscious, one develops all the good qualities of a devotee. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavat yakinchina sarvai gunastatra samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahat guna manoratanasati dahavato bai. One who is a devotee develops all the good qualities of the devas, but one who is not a devotee, even though they may seem to have good qualities, have no good qualities. Just like when the dog sees the master come home, his tail starts wagging, he starts jumping up and down, and he tries to lick the face of the master. And the master says, just see, this dog loves me. Even my wife doesn't treat me like this. Right? But actually it's not true, because when the dog is licking the face of the master, he's thinking, one day I will eat you also. He's a carnivorous animal, right? And pet dogs have done that. They've killed little kids. What? They tried to eat you also? Wow. Me too? Hashtag. Yes, go ahead. Wow. Wow. You were saved by the car. Okay. Okay, 5 minutes of dog pastimes. Go ahead. Yeah.
The biggest dog in the world is 10 feet.
Okay, I hope I never see that dog. There's one dog I don't want to see. Okay. In this way, although living in our material conditional life, we can get out of the entanglement of material contamination without leaving our positions. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advises, therefore, that one does not have to change his position. One simply has to hear from the perfect source, this is called parampara, and follow the principles for practical application in life. Thus, one can attain the highest perfection of life, liberation, and go back home, back to Godhead. In other words, the change required is a change in consciousness, not in the body. Unfortunately, in this fallen age, people are concerned with the body, not with the soul. They have invented so many isms pertaining to the body only, not to the soul. So socialism, communism, capitalism, monarchism, anarchism, all these isms are based on the body. What? Anarchy. Anarchy means no government, no organized. Yeah, just do whatever you feel is good. Okay, Mayapur, if this question is not a good question, I'm not going to let you raise your hand anymore. So you're going to say something or not? If it's not a good question, then you're not allowed to raise your hand anymore.
It was like when you said how dogs eat your people. Also, this person, like on YouTube, I watched this video.
What? Speak louder into the microphone.
This person, he accidentally didn't give his dogs food, and he left for 2 weeks on a trip. Yeah. And right when he came back, all the dogs ate him.
Wow. There you go.
And the neighbors, they were like, "Oh my God, he never comes out of his house. Let's knock on the door." And when they knocked on the door, they only saw his bones on his bed. And
the dogs had a feast?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, feed your dog. Otherwise, you'll be dead meat for the dog. Okay. Well, you read that in the newspaper or something, or in the news? On the YouTube. Okay. How do you know it's true? Maybe it was just a movie or fake news. Okay, here it's saying that you don't have to change your position. If you're a dentist or a doctor or you have a 7-Eleven, you don't have to change your work. You have to change your consciousness, right? By practicing Krishna consciousness. And you can attain perfection just by doing your normal work. Of course, you know, if you have a 7-Eleven and you're selling beef jerkies, you might switch to faux meat. Faux meat means it's fake meat. It looks exactly like meat, tastes exactly like meat, but it's not meat. Yes. Well, we say Hare Krishna when you say
Are there any places over the world that go by anarchism?
Anarchism? Yeah. You go to any heavy metal concert, is anarchy. You go to, like there was a fight match in New York, in London recently, or in England recently, Manchester, like yesterday, the day before, and these two heavyweights are fighting, and then the crowd started fighting, and the two heavyweights stopped fighting and they started watching the crowd, you know. Yeah, so that's anarchy. There's nobody's following any rules. They're just doing whatever they feel like doing. But there have been governments that have been anarchic, such as whenever, like a hippie commune, where they actually propound the philosophy, do whatever you please. So that's anarchy, you know. Nobody has any possessions. Nobody owns their own kids. And everyone just does whatever they feel. It's anarchy. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
So I was listening to a class by my Guru Maharaj, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So he mentioned that in Satyuga, there was Varnashram was not still established, so there were no 4 Varnas, no 4 ashrams.
They didn't need them.
Yeah, so everyone was Hamsa. That means as soon as they are born, they grow up, they just go and practice meditation in the forest. And so there is no form of government. So in that sense, it's anarchy, not in the sense of chaos, but just lack of hierarchy, of being in it. So that's an anarchic form of life.
Good. In the modern age of democracy, there are so many government representatives voting for legislation. Every day they bring out a new law, but because these laws are only mental concoctions manufactured by inexperienced, conditioned souls, they cannot give relief to human society. Formerly, although the kings were autocrats, meaning they were like one king who made all the rules and made all judgments. Right? People could advise him, like the Brahmanas, but he made the final decision. They didn't have like democratic votes. The king made the final decision. Right? He would hear all sides and then he would make a decision. No, you can't do that. No. Formerly, although the kings were autocrats, they strictly followed the principles laid down by great sages and saintly persons. There were no mistakes in ruling over the country, and everything went perfectly. The citizens were completely pious. The king levied taxes legitimately, and therefore the situation was very happy. At the present moment, the so-called executive heads are more or less selected from materially ambitious persons who simply look after their own personal interests. They have no knowledge of the Shastras. In other words, the executive heads are fools and rascals in the strict sense of the terms, and the people in general are Sudras. This combination of fools and rascals and Sudras cannot bring about peace and prosperity in this world. Therefore, we find periodic upheavals in society in the forms of battles, communal riots, and fratricidal quarrels. Under these circumstances, not only are the leaders unable to lead the people toward liberation, but they cannot even give them peace of mind. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that anyone who lives on concocted ideas without reference to the Shastras never becomes successful and does not attain happiness or liberation after death. So this is a big statement by Prabhupada. Yes. Hare Krishna. How many times are you going to say
Athens was a direct democracy, right? Like, unlike ours.
Yeah, and they voted to kill Socrates. That's the danger of a direct democracy. Yes.
You said when you're in, like, you're reading the lines, how, like, if the king treats everyone properly, there's a good peace and the demigods are, like, happy. Like,
yeah, and they'll come and visit the earth.
Yeah. So, you said in another class that, like, if the king is regular and he does a good, like, puja for the Lord, the demigods will shower rains and then they'll turn into, like, gold. And
when the king is properly managing the government, then Mother Earth, Bhumi Devi, cooperates with the people, and wonderful things happen, like raindrops that fall on different parts of the earth will produce gold and silver and pearls and nice things. And the earth will unfold all the opulences. Right? Okay. So we see here that if the leaders of society are fools and rascals and the people are rogues, then there's going to be periodic upheavals, because the combination of fools and rascals and rogues or sudras cannot bring about peace and prosperity. So if we want to get rid of rioting, fratricidal quarrels, family quarrels, different types of violence and war, then you have to have a good leader, and the leader has to train the people to become good people. Then everyone will live peacefully and happily. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that anyone who lives on concocted ideas. What does that mean, a concocted idea? What is a concocted idea? Yes, Shasta. It's, you just think of something and you think, oh, this is good. You don't check to see with. You don't use the triangle of verification. What's the triangle of verification? Yeah, you want to say something? Go ahead. What do you want to say? Yes. What is a concocted idea? Yes. When it says concocted, it means they think something up. They don't check to see if it's actually bona fide based on Krishna's words, the words of the previous acharyas, and the word of the present guru. That's called the triangle of verification, right? All three have to coincide. So if your concocted idea is not validated by the triangle of verification, then it's concocted, then it's something made up that has no validity, and you should not follow that idea. Okay. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that anyone who lives on concocted ideas without reference to the Shastras never becomes successful and does not attain happiness or liberation after death. So that is the verse 1623. Yashastra siddhim utsrija. He who discards religious injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. So homework for next week is this verse, 1623. You want to read this verse and explain what is whimsical behavior and why it will not lead to happiness, perfection, or going back to Godhead. Okay? Did you write the homework down? You have to read 16th chapter, verse 23, and explain what is whimsical behavior and why whimsical behavior and concocted ideas will never, following them, will never lead to perfection, happiness, or going back to Godhead. And then give real-world examples of whimsical ideas that have been voted into to law. Yes. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Yamuna can't speak because every time she starts to speak, she says, Hare Krishna. Okay, good. All right, so we'll stop right there, and we'll continue next week with 4:20:16. We finished 4:20:15. Hare Krishna.